Section 64 of the Book of Household Management. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sarah Williams. The Book of Household Management by Isabella Beeton. Recipes, Chapter 27, Part 6. Baked Rice Pudding 1. 1342. Ingredients: 1 small teacupful of rice, 4 eggs, 1 pint of milk, 2 ounces of fresh butter, 2 ounces of beef marrow, 1/4 pound of currants, 2 tablespoonfuls of brandy, nutmeg, 1/4 pound of sugar, the rind of 1/2 lemon. Mode: put the lemon rind and milk into a stewpan, and let it infuse till the milk is well flavored with the lemon. In the meantime, boil the rice until tender in water, with a very small quantity of salt, and when done, let it be thoroughly drained. Beat the eggs, stir to them the milk, which should be strained, the butter, marrow, currants, and remaining ingredients. Add the rice and mix all well together. Line the edges of the dish with puff paste, put in the pudding, and bake for about 3/4 hour in a slow oven. Slices of candied peel may be added at pleasure, or sultana raisins may be substituted for the currants. Time, 3/4 hour. Average cost, 1s. 3d. Sufficient for 5 or 6 persons. Seasonable. Suitable for a winter pudding, when fresh fruits are not obtainable. Rice, with proper management in cooking it, forms a very valuable and cheap addition to our farinaceous food, and in years of scarcity has been found eminently useful in lessening the consumption of flour. When boiled, it should be so managed that the grains, though soft, should be as little broken and as dry as possible. The water in which it is dressed should only simmer, not boil hard. Very little water should be used, as the grains absorb a great deal, and consequently swell much. If they take up too much at first, it is difficult to get rid of it. Baking it in puddings is the best mode of preparing it. 2. Plain and economical. A nice pudding for children. 1343. Ingredients: 1 teacupful of rice, 2 tablespoonfuls of moist sugar, 1 quart of milk, 1/2 ounce of butter, or 2 small tablespoonfuls of chopped suet, 1/2 teaspoonful of grated nutmeg. Mode: wash the rice, put it into a pie dish with the sugar, pour in the milk, and stir these ingredients well together. Then add the butter cut up into very small pieces, or, instead of this, the above proportion of finely minced suet. Grate a little nutmeg over the top, and bake the pudding in a moderate oven from 1½ to 2 hours. As the rice is not previously cooked, care must be taken that the pudding be very slowly baked, to give plenty of time for the rice to swell, and for it to be very thoroughly done. Time, 1½ to 2 hours. Average cost, 7d. Sufficient for 5 or 6 children. Seasonable at any time. Plain boiled rice pudding, 1344. Ingredients: 1/2 pound of rice. Mode: wash the rice, tie it in a pudding cloth, allowing room for the rice to swell, and put it into a saucepan of cold water. Boil it gently for 2 hours, and if, after a time, the cloth seems tied too loosely, take the rice up and tighten the cloth. Serve with sweet melted butter, or cold butter and sugar, or stewed fruit, jam, or marmalade, any of which accompaniments are suitable for plain boiled rice. Time, 2 hours after the rice boils. Average cost, 2d. Sufficient for 4 or 5 persons. Seasonable at any time. Boiled rice pudding. 1. 1345. Ingredients: 1/4 pound of rice, 1 1/2 pint of new milk, 2 ounces of butter, 4 eggs, 1/2 saltspoonful of salt, 4 large tablespoonfuls of moist sugar, flavoring to taste. Mode: stew the rice very gently in the above proportion of new milk, and, when it is tender, pour it into a basin, stir in the butter, and let it stand to cool. Then beat the eggs, add these to the rice with the sugar, salt, and any flavoring that may be approved, such as nutmeg, powdered cinnamon, grated lemon peel, essence of bitter almonds, or vanilla. When all is well stirred, put the pudding into a buttered basin, tie it down with a cloth, plunge it into boiling water, and boil for 1¼ hour. Time, 1¼ hour. Average cost, 1s. Sufficient for 5 or 6 persons. Seasonable at any time. Varieties of rice. Of the varieties of rice brought to our market, That from Bengal is chiefly of the species denominated cargo rice, and is of a coarse reddish-brown cast, but peculiarly sweet and large-grained. It does not readily separate from the husk, but it is preferred by the natives to all the others. Pachua rice is more esteemed in Europe, and is of very superior quality. It is small-grained, rather long and wiry, and is remarkably white. The Carolina rice is considered as the best, and is likewise the dearest in London. 2. With dried or fresh fruit, a nice dish for the nursery. 1346. Ingredients: 1/2 pound of rice, 1 pint of any kind of fresh fruit that may be preferred, or 1/2 pound of raisins and currants. Mode: wash the rice, tie it in a cloth, allowing room for it to swell, and put it into a saucepan of cold water. Let it boil for an hour, then take it up, untie the cloth, stir in the fruit, and tie it up again tolerably tight, and put it into the water for the remainder of that time. Boil for another hour, or rather longer, and serve with sweet sauce, if made with dried fruit, and with plain sifted sugar and a little cream or milk, if made with fresh fruit. Time: 1 hour to boil the rice without the fruit, 1 hour, or longer, afterwards. Average cost, 6d. Sufficient for 6 or 7 children. Seasonable at any time. Note: this pudding is very good made with apples. They should be pared, cored, and cut into thin slices. Boiled rice for curries, etc. 1347. Ingredients: 3/4 pound of rice, water, salt. Mode: pick, wash, and soak the rice in plenty of cold water. Then have ready a saucepan of boiling water. Drop the rice into it, and keep it boiling quickly, with the lid uncovered, until it is tender, but not soft. Take it up, drain it, and put it on a dish before the fire to dry. Do not handle it much with a spoon, but shake it a little with 2 forks, that it may all be equally dried, and stew over a little salt. It is now ready to serve as a border, with a curry or fricassee in the centre. Some cooks smooth the rice with the back of a spoon, and then brush it over with the yolk of an egg, and set it in the oven to color. But the rice well boiled, white and dry, and with every grain distinct, is by far the more preferable mode of dressing it. During the process of boiling, the rice should be attentively watched, that it be not overdone, as, if this is the case, it will have a mashed and soft appearance. Time: 15 to 25 minutes, according to the quality of the rice. Average cost, 3d. Sufficient for a large dish of curry. Seasonable at any time. Rice, in the native rough state, with the husk on, is called paddy, both in India and America, and it will keep better, as for a much longer time in this state, than after the husk has been removed. Besides which, prepared rice is apt to become dirty from rubbing about in the voyage on board ship, and in the warehouses. It is sometimes brought to England in the shape of paddy, and the husk detached here. Paddy pays less duty than shelled rice. To boil rice for curries, etc. Sawyer's recipe. 1348. Ingredients: 1 pound of the best Carolina rice, 2 quarts of water, 1½ ounces of butter, a little salt. Mode: wash the rice well in 2 waters. Make 2 quarts of water boiling, and throw the rice into it. Boil it until 3 parts done, then drain it on a sieve. Butter the bottom and sides of a stewpan. Put in the rice, place the lid on tightly, and set it by the side of the fire until the rice is perfectly tender, occasionally shaking the pan to prevent it sticking. Prepared thus, every grain should be separate and white. Either dish it separately, or place it round the curry as a border. Time: 15 to 25 minutes. Average cost, 7d. Sufficient for 2 moderate-sized curries. Seasonable at any time. Buttered rice. 1349. Ingredients: 1/4 pound of rice, 1 1/2 pints of milk, 2 ounces of butter, sugar to taste, grated nutmeg or pounded cinnamon. Mode: wash and pick the rice, drain and put it into a saucepan with the milk. Let it swell gradually, and, when tender, pour off the milk, stir in the butter, sugar, and nutmeg or cinnamon, and, when the butter is thoroughly melted, and the whole is quite hot, serve. After the milk is poured off, be particular that the rice does not burn. To prevent this, do not cease stirring it. Time: about 3/4 hour to swell the rice. Average cost, 7d. Sufficient for 4 or 5 persons. Seasonable at any time. Rice was held in great esteem by the ancients. They considered it as a very beneficial food for the chest. Therefore it was recommended in cases of consumption, and to persons subject to spitting of blood. Savory casserole of rice, or rice border, for ragouts, fricassees, etc. An entree. 1350. Ingredients: 1 1/2 pound of rice, 3 pints of weak stock or broth, 2 slices of fat ham, 1 teaspoonful of salt. Mode. A casserole of rice, when made in a mould, is not such a difficult operation as when it is moulded by the hand. It is an elegant and inexpensive entree, as the remains of cold fish, flesh, or fowl may be served as ragouts, fricassees, etc., enclosed in the casserole. It requires great nicety in its preparation, the principal thing to attend to being the boiling of the rice, as, if this is not sufficiently cooked, the casserole, when moulded, will have a rough appearance, which would entirely spoil it. After having washed the rice in 2 or 3 waters, drain it well, and put it into a stewpan with the stock, ham, and salt. Cover the pan closely, and let the rice gradually swell over a slow fire, occasionally stirring, to prevent its sticking. When it is quite soft, strain it, pick out the pieces of ham, and with the back of a large wooden spoon mash the rice to a perfectly smooth paste. Then well grease a mould (moulds are made purposely for rice borders), and turn it upside down for a minute or 2 to drain away the fat, should there be too much. Put some rice all round the bottom and sides of it. Place a piece of soft bread in the middle, and cover it with rice. Press it in equally with the spoon, and let it cool. Then dip the mould into hot water. Turn the casserole carefully onto a dish. Mark where the lid is to be formed on the top, by making an incision with the point of a knife about an inch from the edge all around, and put it into a very hot oven. Brush it over with a little clarified butter, and bake about 1/2 hour, or rather longer. Then carefully remove the lid, which will be formed by the incision having been made all around, and remove the bread, in small pieces, with the point of a penknife, being careful not to injure the casserole. Fill the centre with the ragout or fricassee, which should be made thick. Put on the cover, glaze it, place it in the oven to set the glaze, and serve as hot as possible. The casserole should not be emptied too much, as it is liable to crack from the weight of whatever is put in, and in baking it let the oven be very hot, or the casserole will probably break. Time. About 3/4 hour to swell the rice. Sufficient for 2 moderate-sized casseroles. Seasonable at any time. Sweet casserole of rice, an entremet. 1351. Ingredients: 1 1/2 pound of rice, 3 pints of milk, sugar to taste, flavouring of bitter almonds, 3 ounces of butter, the yolks of 3 eggs. Mode. This is made in precisely the same manner as a savoury casserole, only substituting the milk and sugar for the stock and salt. Put the milk into a stewpan, with sufficient essence of bitter almonds to flavour it well. Then add the rice, which should be washed, picked, and drained, and let it swell gradually in the milk over a slow fire. When it is tender, stir in the sugar, butter, and yolks of eggs. Butter a mould, press in the rice, and proceed in exactly the same manner as in recipe No. 1350. When the casserole is ready, fill it with a compote of any fruit that may be preferred, or with melted apricot jam, and serve. Time. From 3/4 hour to 1 hour to swell the rice, 1/2 to 3/4 hour to bake the casserole. Average cost, exclusive of the compote or jam, 1s. 9d. Sufficient for 2 casseroles. Seasonable at any time. French rice pudding, or gâteau de riz. 1352. Ingredients: to every 1/4 pound of rice allow 1 quart of milk, the rind of 1 lemon, 1/2 teaspoonful of salt, sugar to taste, 4 ounces of butter, 6 eggs, breadcrumbs. Mode. Put the milk into a stewpan with the lemon rind, and let it infuse for 1/2 hour, or until the former is well flavoured. Then take out the peel, have ready the rice washed, picked, and drained, put it into the milk, and let it gradually swell over a very slow fire. Stir in the butter, salt, and sugar, and when properly sweetened, add the yolks of the eggs, and then the whites, both of which should be well beaten, and add separately to the rice. Butter a mould, Strew in some fine breadcrumbs, and let them be spread equally over it. Then carefully pour in the rice, and bake the pudding in a slow oven for 1 hour. Turn it out of the mould, and garnish the dish with preserved cherries, or any bright-coloured jelly or jam. This pudding would be exceedingly nice, flavoured with essence of vanilla. Time, 3/4 hour to 1 hour for the rice to swell. Be baked 1 hour in a slow oven. Average cost, 1s. 8d. Sufficient for 5 or 6 persons. Seasonable at any time. Baked or boiled ground rice pudding, 1353. Ingredients: 2 pints of milk, 6 tablespoonfuls of ground rice, sugar to taste, 4 eggs, flavouring of lemon rind, nutmeg, bitter almonds, or bay leaf. Mode: put 1 1/2 pint of the milk into a stewpan, with any of the above flavourings, and bring it to the boiling point, and, with the other 1/2 pint of milk, mix the ground rice to a smooth batter. Strain the boiling milk to this, and stir over the fire until the mixture is tolerably thick. Then pour it into a basin, leave it uncovered, and when nearly or quite cold, sweeten it to taste, and add the eggs, which should be previously well beaten with a little salt. Put the pudding into a well-buttered basin, tie it down with a cloth, plunge it into boiling water, and boil for 1 1/2 hours. For a baked pudding, proceed in precisely the same manner, only using half the above proportions of ground rice, with the same quantity of all the other ingredients. An hour will bake the pudding in a moderate oven. Stewed fruit or preserves, or marmalade, may be served with either the boiled or baked pudding, and will be found an improvement. Time, 1 1/2 hours to boil, 1 hour to bake. Average cost, 10d. Sufficient for 5 or 6 persons. Seasonable at any time. Iced rice pudding, 1354. Ingredients: 6 ounces of rice, 1 quart of milk, 1/2 pound of sugar, the yolks of 6 eggs, 1 small tablespoonful of essence of vanilla. Mode: put the rice into a stewpan with the milk and sugar, and let these simmer over a gentle fire until the rice is sufficiently soft to break up into a smooth mass, and should the milk dry away too much, a little more may be added. Stir the rice occasionally to prevent its burning, then beat it to a smooth mixture. Add the yolks of the eggs, which should be well whisked, and the vanilla. Should this flavouring not be liked, essence of bitter almonds may be substituted for it. Put this rice custard into a freezing pot, and proceed as directed in recipe 1290. When wanted for table, turn the pudding out of the mould, and pour over the top, and round it, a compote of oranges, or any other fruit that may be preferred, taking care that the flavouring in the pudding harmonizes well with the fruit that it is served with. Time, 1/2 hour to freeze the mixture. Average cost, 1s. 6d. Exclusive of the compote, 1s. 4d. Seasonable, served all the year round. Miniature rice pudding, 1355. Ingredients: 1/4 pound of rice, 1 1/2 pints of milk, 2 ounces of fresh butter, 4 eggs, sugar to taste, flavouring of lemon peel, bitter almonds, or vanilla, a few strips of candied peel. Mode: let the rice swell in 1 pint of milk over a slow fire, putting it with a strip of lemon peel. Stir to it the butter and the other 1/2 pint of milk, and let the mixture cool. Then add the well-beaten eggs, and a few drops of essence of almonds or essence of vanilla, whichever may be preferred. Butter well with some small cups or moulds. Line them with a few pieces of candied peel sliced very thin, fill them 3 parts full, and bake for about 40 minutes. Turn them out of the cups onto a white doily, and serve with sweet sauce. The flavouring in candied peel might be omitted, and stewed fruit or preserves served instead, with these puddings. Time, 40 minutes. Average cost, 1s. Sufficient for 6 puddings. Seasonable at any time. Arrowroot sauce for puddings, 1356. Ingredients: 2 small tablespoonfuls of arrowroot, 4 dessertspoonfuls of pounded sugar, the juice of 1 lemon, 1/4 teaspoonful of grated nutmeg, 1/2 pint of water. Mode: mix the arrowroot smoothly with the water. Put this into a stewpan. Add the sugar, strained lemon juice, and grated nutmeg. Stir these ingredients over the fire until they boil, when the sauce is ready for use. A small quantity of wine, or any liqueur, would very much improve the flavour of this sauce. It is usually served with bread, rice, custard, or any dry pudding that is not very rich. Time, altogether, 15 minutes. Average cost, 4d. Sufficient for 6 or 7 persons. Cherry sauce for sweet puddings. German recipe. 1357. Ingredients: 1 pound of cherries, 1 tablespoonful of flour, 1 ounce of butter, 1/2 pint of water, 1 wineglassful of port wine, a little grated lemon rind, 4 pounded cloves, 2 tablespoonfuls of lemon juice, sugar to taste. Mode: stone the cherries, and pound the kernels in a mortar to a smooth paste. Put the butter and flour into a saucepan, stir them over the fire until of a pale brown, then add the cherries, the pounded kernels, the wine, and the water. Simmer these gently for 1/4 hour, or until the cherries are quite cooked, and rub the whole through a hair sieve. Add the remaining ingredients, let the sauce boil for another 5 minutes, and serve. This is a delicious sauce to serve with boiled batter pudding, and when thus used, should be sent to table poured over the pudding. Time, 20 minutes to 1/2 hour. Average cost, 1s. 1d. Sufficient for 4 or 5 persons. Seasonable in June, July, and August. Lemon sauce for sweet puddings. 1358. Ingredients: the rind and juice of 1 lemon, 1 tablespoonful of flour, 1 ounce of butter, 1 large wineglassful of sherry, 1 wineglassful of water, sugar to taste, the yolks of 4 eggs. Mode: rub the rind of the lemon onto some lumps of sugar, squeeze out the juice, and strain it. Put the butter and flour into a saucepan, stir them over the fire, and when of a pale brown, add the wine, water, and strained lemon juice. Crush the lumps of sugar that were rubbed on the lemon. Stir these into the sauce, which should be very sweet. When these ingredients are well mixed, and the sugar is melted, put in the beaten yolks of 4 eggs. Keep stirring the sauce until it thickens, when serve. Do not on any account allow it to boil, or it will curdle, and be entirely spoiled. Time. Altogether, 15 minutes. Average cost, 1s. 2d. Sufficient for 7 or 8 persons. Sawyer's sauce for plum pudding. 1359. Ingredients: the yolks of 3 eggs, 1 tablespoonful of powdered sugar, 1 gill of milk, a very little grated lemon rind, 2 small wineglassfuls of brandy. Mode: separate the yolks from the whites of 3 eggs, and put the former into a stewpan. Add the sugar, milk, and grated lemon rind, and stir over the fire until the mixture thickens, but do not allow it to boil. Put in the brandy, let the sauce stand by the side of the fire to get quite hot, keep stirring it, and serve in a boat or tureen separately, or pour it over the pudding. Time, altogether, 10 minutes. Average cost, 1s. Sufficient for 6 or 7 persons. Sweet sauce for puddings. 1360. Ingredients: 1/2 pint of melted butter made with milk, 4 heaped teaspoonfuls of pounded sugar, flavoring of grated lemon rind, or nutmeg, or cinnamon. Mode: make 1/2 pint of melted butter by recipe No. 380, omitting the salt. Stir in the sugar, add a little grated lemon rind, nutmeg, or powdered cinnamon, and serve. Previously to making the melted butter, the milk can be flavored with bitter almonds, by infusing about 6 of them in it for about 1/2 hour. The milk should then be strained before it is added to the other ingredients. This simple sauce may be served for children with rice, batter, or bread pudding. Time, altogether, 15 minutes. Average cost, 4d. Sufficient for 6 or 7 persons. Vanilla custard sauce, to serve with puddings. 1361. Ingredients: 1/2 pint of milk, 2 eggs, 2 ounces of sugar, 10 drops of essence of vanilla. Mode: beat the eggs, sweeten the milk, stir these ingredients well together, and flavor them with essence of vanilla, regulating the proportion of this latter ingredient by the strength of the essence, the size of the eggs, etc. Put the mixture into a small jug, place this jug in a saucepan of boiling water, and stir the sauce one way until it thickens, but do not allow it to boil, or it will instantly curdle. Serve in a boat or tureen separately, with plum, bread, or any kind of dry pudding. Essence of bitter almonds or lemon rind may be substituted for the vanilla when they are more in accordance with the flavoring of the pudding with which the sauce is intended to be served. Time. To be stirred in the jug from 8 to 10 minutes. Average cost, 4d. Sufficient for 4 or 5 persons. An excellent wine sauce for puddings. 1362. Ingredients: the yolks of 4 eggs, 1 teaspoonful of flour, 2 ounces of pounded sugar, 2 ounces of fresh butter, 1/4 saltspoonful of salt, 1/2 pint of sherry or Madeira. Mode. Put the butter and flour into a saucepan and stir them over the fire until the former thickens. Then add the sugar, salt, and wine, and mix these ingredients well together. Separate the yolks from the whites of 4 eggs, beat up the former, and stir them briskly to the sauce. Let it remain over the fire until it is on the point of simmering, but do not allow it to boil, or it will instantly curdle. This sauce is delicious with plum, marrow, or bread puddings, but should be served separately and not poured over the pudding. Time. From 5 to 7 minutes to thicken the butter, about 5 minutes to stir the sauce over the fire. Average cost, 1 shilling 10d. Sufficient for 7 or 8 persons. Wine or brandy sauce for puddings. 1363. Ingredients: 1/2 pint of melted butter No. 377, 3 heaped teaspoonfuls of pounded sugar, 1 large wineglassful of port or sherry, or 3/4 of a small glassful of brandy. Mode. Make 1/2 pint of melted butter by recipe No. 377, omitting the salt, then stir in the sugar and wine or spirit in the above proportion, and bring the sauce to the point of boiling. Serve in a boat or tureen separately, and if liked, pour a little of it over the pudding. To convert this into punch sauce, add to the sherry and brandy a small wineglassful of rum, and the juice and grated rind of 1/2 lemon. Liqueurs, such as maraschino or curacao, substituted for the brandy, make excellent sauces. Time. Altogether 15 minutes. Average cost, 8d. Sufficient for 6 or 7 persons. Wine sauce for puddings. 1364. Ingredients: 1/2 pint of sherry, 1/4 pint of water, the yolks of 6 eggs, 2 ounces of pounded sugar, 1/2 teaspoonful of minced lemon peel, a few pieces of candy citron cut thin. Mode. Separate the yolks from the whites of 5 eggs, beat them, and put them into a very clean saucepan. If at hand, a lined one is best. Add all the other ingredients, place them over a sharp fire, and keep stirring until the sauce begins to thicken. Then take it off and serve. If it is allowed to boil, it will be spoiled, as it will immediately curdle. Time. To be stirred over the fire 3 or 4 minutes, but it must not boil. Average cost, 2 shillings. Sufficient for a large pudding, allowing half this quantity for a moderate-sized one. Seasonable at any time. Opened heart of strawberry or any other kind of preserve. 1365. Ingredients: trimmings of puff paste, any kind of jam. Mode. Butter a tart pan of the shape shown in the engraving, roll out the paste to the thickness of 1/2 inch, and line the pan with it. Prick a few holes in the bottom with a fork, and bake the tart in a brisk oven from 10 to 15 minutes. Let the paste cool a little, then fill it with preserve. Place a few stars or leaves on it, which have been previously cut out of the paste and baked, and the tart is ready for table. By making it in this manner, both the flavour and colour of the jam are preserved, which would otherwise be lost were it baked in the oven on the paste, and besides, so much jam is not required. Time. 10 to 15 minutes. Average cost, 8d. Sufficient, 1 tart for 3 persons. Seasonable at any time. Strawberry. The name of this ancient fruit is said to be derived from an ancient custom of putting straw beneath the fruit when it began to ripen, which is very useful to keep it moist and clean. The strawberry belongs to temperate and rather cold climates, and no fruit of these latitudes, that ripens without the aid of artificial heat, is at all comparable with it in point of flavour. The strawberry is widely diffused, being found in most parts of the world, particularly in Europe and America. Quickly made puddings. 1366. Ingredients: 1/4 pound of butter, 1/2 pound of sifted sugar, 1/4 pound of flour, 1 pint of milk, 5 eggs, a little grated lemon rind. Mode. Make the milk hot, stir in the butter, and let it cool before the other ingredients are added to it. Then stir in the sugar, flour, and eggs, which should be well whisked, and omit the whites of 2. Flavor with a little grated lemon rind, and beat the mixture well. Butter some small cups, rather more than half fill them, bake from 20 minutes to 1/2 hour, according to the size of the puddings, and serve with fruit, custard, or wine sauce, a little of which may be poured over them. Time, 20 minutes to 1/2 hour. Average cost, 1s. 2d. Sufficient for 6 puddings. Seasonable at any time. Sago pudding. 1367. Ingredients: 1 1/2 pint of milk, 3 tablespoonfuls of sago, the rind of 1/2 lemon, 3 ounces of sugar, 4 eggs, 1 1/2 ounce of butter, grated nutmeg, puff paste. Mode: put the milk and lemon rind into a stewpan, place it by the side of the fire, and let it remain until the milk is well flavored with the lemon. Then strain it, mix with it the sago and sugar, and simmer gently for about 15 minutes. Let the mixture cool a little, then stir to it the eggs, which should be well beaten, and the butter. Line the edges of a pie dish with puff paste, pour in the pudding, grate a little nutmeg over the top, and bake from 3/4 to 1 hour. Time, 3/4 to 1 hour, or longer if the oven is very slow. Average cost, 1s. Sufficient for 5 or 6 persons. Seasonable at any time. Note: the above pudding may be boiled instead of baked, but then allow 2 extra teaspoonfuls of sago, and boil the pudding in a buttered basin from 1 1/4 to 1 3/4 hours. Sago. Sago is the pith from a species of palm, Cycas circinalis. Its form is that of a small round grain. There are 2 sorts of sago, the white and the yellow, but their properties are the same. Sago absorbs the liquid in which it is cooked, becomes transparent and soft, and retains its original shape. Its alimentary properties are the same as those of tapioca and arrowroot. Sago sauce for sweet puddings. 1368. Ingredients: 1 tablespoonful of sago, 1/3 pint of water, 1/4 pint of port or sherry, the rind and juice of 1 small lemon, sugar to taste. When the flavor is liked, a little pounded cinnamon. Mode: wash the sago in 2 or 3 waters, then put it into a saucepan with the water and lemon peel. Let it simmer gently by the side of the fire for 10 minutes, then take out the lemon peel, add the remaining ingredients, give 1 boil, and serve. Be particular to strain the lemon juice before adding it to the sauce. This, on trial, will be found a delicious accompaniment to various boiled puddings, such as those made of bread, raisins, rice, etc. Time, 10 minutes. Average cost, 9d. Sufficient for 7 or 8 persons. Baked semolina pudding. 1369. Ingredients: 3 ounces of semolina, 1 1/2 pint of milk, 1/4 pound of sugar, 12 bitter almonds, 3 ounces of butter, 4 eggs. Mode: flavor the milk with the bitter almonds by infusing them in it by the side of the fire for about 1/2 hour. Then strain it, and mix with it the semolina, sugar, and butter. Stir these ingredients over the fire for a few minutes, then take them off and gradually mix in the eggs, which should be well beaten. Butter a pie dish, line the edges with puff paste, put in the pudding, and bake in a rather slow oven from 40 to 50 minutes. Serve with custard sauce or stewed fruit, a little of which may be poured over the pudding. Time, 40 to 50 minutes. Average cost, 1s. 2d. Sufficient for 5 or 6 persons. Seasonable at any time. Semolina. After vermicelli, semolina is the most useful ingredient that can be used for thickening soups, meat, or vegetable, of rich or simple quality. Semolina is softening, light, wholesome, easy of digestion, and adapted to the infant, the aged, and the invalid. That of a clear yellow color, well dried and newly made, is the fittest for use. Tapioca pudding. 1370. Ingredients: 3 ounces of tapioca, 1 quart of milk, 2 ounces of butter, 1/4 pound of sugar, 4 eggs, flavoring of vanilla, grated lemon rind, or bitter almonds. Mode: wash the tapioca and let it stew gently in the milk by side of the fire for 1/4 hour, occasionally stirring it, then let it cool a little. Mix with it the butter, sugar, and eggs, which should be well beaten, and flavor with either of the above ingredients, putting in about 12 drops of the essence of almonds or vanilla, whichever is preferred. Butter a pie dish and line the edges with puff paste. Put in the pudding and bake in a moderate oven for an hour. If the pudding is boiled, add a little more tapioca and boil it in a buttered basin 1 1/2 hour. Time: 1 hour to bake, 1 1/2 hour to boil. Average cost, 1s. 2d. Sufficient for 5 or 6 persons. Seasonable at any time. Tapioca. Tapioca is recommended to the convalescent, as being easy of digestion. It may be used in soup or broth, or mixed with milk or water and butter. It is excellent food for either the healthy or sick, for the reason that it is so quickly digested without fatigue to the stomach. End of section 64. Recording by Sarah Williams, Germantown, Maryland, June 2008.